are Ethan Bock. Ethan Bock covers the Mountaineers with me at WV Sports Now. Ethan, you actually were there in attendance to be able to talk to Neal Brown today. And unlike, say, Pat Narduzzi, where maybe he was on the hot seat a couple years ago, but then wins a conference, that's certainly going to calm things down for you. And you still end up in a solid bowl game, even though maybe down from what people thought a year ago. But Neal Brown, the AD, went on a show with me and literally admitted we're in a year-long evaluation process, and that's all I can commit to. So he's on the hot seat. He needs to win now. He says he's not looking to the portal as much, even though they're flying offers all over the place in terms of QB, other positions they are. But unlike Pitt, they put a lot of emphasis recruiting-wise this year with these high school kids to build. They claim they're a developmental program. They're going to build. They're going to go to the portal, but they can't live in the portal. They've swung and missed in the portal for years now. But this was a solid recruiting class, I would think. You're looking at 41, 37, 42. You get the sixth best recruit in the history of the program, Rodney Gallagher. He's a Pennsylvania kid who they end up getting. So they're the only school that we're talking here in this program that isn't located in Pennsylvania, and they get Rodney Gallagher to come down to Morgantown. They got a lot of question marks around this program, but Gallagher, Jaheim White, etc., they got 4 stars. They got more than one. They got a top recruit that a lot of these schools wanted. They got a lot of what they needed. It's young kids, though. How would you say West Virginia did? And then were you surprised at all to hear Neal Brown be so forthcoming that, hey, we're not going to really worry about QB in the portal and we're going to be developing and really stick to developing, because they're almost taking now the opposite approach to what they've been for years and to what Pitt is in terms of this being a long game for the Mountaineers?
Yeah, I think you look at this next calendar year under Neal Brown, and it's almost like a year-long test for him. And it seems like he's basically committed to not building around the transfer portal, which I find a little odd, because I think you can, if you get the right pieces in the transfer portal, you can build a pretty good team. Like you've seen Bob Huggins do that for basketball.
Right.
It's a little different for football, I think, but you still can have that same mentality. But I think today showed he's committed to developing his guys at West Virginia. He's not going to go out and get a JT Daniels and try that experiment again. I mentioned it today that this is the first time that they've really committed in-house with a quarterback. When he first got to West Virginia, he went after Austin Kendall from Oklahoma, Jarrett Diggy from Bowling Green. And then last year with JT Daniels, it's really the first time where one of his high school recruits is going to get the call next year, whether that's Garrett Green or Nico Marchio. So I think overall it was a good day for West Virginia, minus Justin Benton flipping the Dana.
I was gonna get there. Yeah, that's the only thing that stings.
They didn't bat 1,000 like Pitt, but I still think an overall good day, and probably just a test to see what Neal wants to do over the next year.
Yeah.
Ethan, was there a player at the press conference today that Carl touched upon? Isaiah Neal, a guy that Pat Narduzzi was glowing over. Was there somebody that you detected that Neal Brown was, or position that they got that he was very excited about?
Yeah, I'll give the obvious Rodney Gallagher. He talked about Rodney
right
for probably 5 to 10 minutes about how great his family is and how close he is to West Virginia, and it was a priority to keep him quote unquote in West Virginia. He considered him a local kid. That's how they wanted to recruit him. He talked about how he respected it a lot that Rodney and his family were very transparent when he visited Penn State last month. So yeah, he spoke a lot highly on Rodney Gallagher. And I'll give someone other than Gallagher too. He praised Sean Boyle a lot.
That's who I was going to bring up if you didn't. 100%. Yeah.
Yep. He said that he's flown under the radar, and this class in general seems like, the way Neal summarized it, they have a lot of multi-sport athletes, a lot of true talented guys that they hope flew under a radar enough for them to get over the top schools in the country.
Yeah, and they were still vying for some other, because we mentioned when you lose a kid to a big time program, even being in the mix is still an impressive thing recruiting wise. So West Virginia does not bat 1,000 here, but they do bring in multiple 4-stars. They do bring in Gallagher and even other 4-stars like Amari Snowden, who they were in the top 5 for. He goes to Wisconsin, but they're in the mix for 4+ star kids, despite 3 out of 4 years being a losing program. I don't know what he's selling, but a lot of these recruits are in love with Neal Brown, as we've talked about and covered a lot of WVSN. Rodney Gallagher, Jaheim White, several. They flat out told me directly they were waiting to see what happened with Brown. That's why they maybe were thinking about even wavering, or some fans thought they were. If Brown was fired, I don't think you get those kids. So I guess my question is, because as you know, with the Mountaineer fan, they're going to say, yeah, okay, we kept those kids, but keeping those kids isn't enough reason for me to want to still trust the climb with Neal Brown, even though he's impressive recruiting wise, even if I give you that argument, because as we talked about, it's kind of a portal era. You don't want to wait around. Gallagher is there now, but Gallagher could transfer out in a year. He could end up at Penn State before the end of it if we're doing this show next year. So do you think this is the right strategy, I guess, right now? Because this is opposite of what they've been doing. I guess the thinking could be that, hey, we went big. Not only did we go big, but it's out there. A lot of NIL money, whether it's Country Road Trust or however they got it, went to JT Daniels. He played well early in the season. They didn't win. They end up benching him at the end of the season. Obviously, that didn't work out, despite it appears the relationship's still positive. So that wasn't worth the money, even though you got to take risks sometimes. And maybe they don't want to take risks again, but they also don't have much time to try to figure things out. So Gallagher, to be fair, is changing positions. He mostly played quarterback in high school, did play receiver last year. You do have Jaheim White and a lot of these DJ Oliver, a lot of these stud running backs coming over. But I could argue, Ethan, running back to the position they didn't really need. I mean, everybody on the roster last year was rushing for 150 yards every time they touched the football. So you're getting 4-star running backs. Do you really need those? You do get legit receivers, but you're going to probably want veterans when you have a young and experienced QB. And then defensively, you just need everything. Does this feel like the right strategy to you?
Yeah, I feel like it is, just because I feel like this is what West Virginia's always thrived in, is developing players. Even though we are in a very different era of college athletics, Neal Brown brought up how Dana developed guys, how Rich Rod developed guys, Nayland. So
yeah, they weren't doing it off 5-star kids. Pat White, people wanted to make him a cornerback, and he played quarterback and won 5 bowl games. Right.
Yeah, so I think it's a good strategy. I wish they didn't experiment much with the transfer. Like, I kind of wish they figured this out before year 5, but I mean, at least they're committing to something. And you can never go wrong with having too many running backs. You never know what's going to happen in this era. So I think that goes for any position. You can't sit back and say, well, we already have this many running backs or quarterbacks on the roster. Why are we going out and getting 3 to 4 more?
Sure.
You just never know in this new era. Guys can tomorrow. So
right.
Yeah, these kids are all on basically year-to-year scholarships.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
100%.
Was the big news for West Virginia a couple weeks ago or last week, whenever it happened? All these days are running together, but the vacant offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, moving on, was that brought up, or how timeline for filling that, or just any thoughts on Harrell leaving after one season?
Yeah, Neal was asked about Graham leaving and what the next steps were. He gave a very short answer. He wanted to stick to recruiting today, but just said there's a couple spots he's going to shift around during the next few weeks or months. So that's all he gave. So I think they just have to identify very quickly what they want to do on offense next year and hire or promote somebody to that position.
It also shows, Mike, because we got our answer. I did ask a couple kids, but they didn't want to go on the record prior to National Signing Day. But it's clear Graham Harrell, even though he's the offensive coordinator, him leaving was not enough reason for these kids not to sign. So they must still be confident in whatever Neal Brown's selling them. They must still be confident on what Neal Brown has maybe told them behind closed doors about future plans for the OC. I know Mike touched on that on WVSN about possibilities and who maybe could be the offensive coordinator for West Virginia. Clint Trickett's name is brought up a lot, just winning a bowl game as the OC at Marshall. He has ties there, but even going totally off the board because the AD was totally off the board with no ties. Last one, Ethan, I do want to bring up because this is different than, say, what Pitt and even Penn State deal with. And we brought up in terms of rankings, Pitt winning a conference and then only being in the top 50, and West Virginia doing better in terms of recruiting ranks, even though maybe now doing a different strategy portal-wise, and it's hard to evaluate that. But West Virginia, in order to recruit, they dip into Western Pennsylvania. They're going into PA. They're claiming Rodney Gallagher's a local kid, but he's a Pennsylvania product. They're going down to Florida. They're getting in a top 5 for kids in Michigan and the DMV. And what's local to West Virginia is different than other schools because they don't really have a Western Pennsylvania WPIAL base that if we recruit here, we'll at least get to a certain level of success because it's so good here. Mike Farrell touches on it all the time. West Virginia doesn't have that. And when they've ever won, they haven't done it really with that many local kids. You get one local West Virginia product in this class. Was there anything brought up to Neal about, hey, you need to do more locally? Because I know maybe a lot of people have criticized that there are some 3-star kids in West Virginia that the Mountaineers haven't even offered. Like, why are they shying away from West Virginia high school kids? Or was that brought up at all? And did Neal have an answer for that?
No, that wasn't brought up. He just talked about he just beat it in that Gallagher was a local kid to him every time.
Okay.
Every time he left his house, the exit said Union.
Lives in Pennsylvania, but okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think this for what resources they have in regards to high school kids and just the high school football programs in West Virginia. I think this coaching staff has done a great job the last couple off seasons, going out down south, especially getting kids from Georgia, Florida, Carolinas, DMV, et cetera. I don't think West Virginia high school football should be underlooked, obviously, especially if you're WVU, because you really D1 competition, you only have Marshall. So in state, there's really, there's not like,
those kids all grew up Mountaineer fans. They didn't grow up Marshall fans, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to trust in their talent recognition, and as long as they can get guys to come to campus and they can develop them over the next 2-3 years, who cares where they get them from?
I agree. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I know that's huge with recruiting out of Western Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania in general. I just think that's I think that's a bit overrated. I think it's a bit antiquated. Pitt this year, they get 2 kids out of Pennsylvania in general. If you go by the last 10 years, it's very obvious. I do stories on this every year where their offers are. Pitt, by far, the number 1 state that they extend offers to with players just because of the talent there is just crazy. And they all can't sign with Florida State, Miami, and it's Florida. And number 2 on that list, it's not even Pennsylvania. It's Georgia. Those 2 states have more talent, and that's why Archie Collins and Tim Salem and Charlie Partridge and they live.
West Virginia's done the same thing though. Noel Devine, Florida, that was one of the best recruits they got in the history of the program. That was a Florida kid.
Yeah, that's the smart strategy. It's you go where the talent is. Forget about the fact that where they're from and we got to get home. Yeah, if there's some good kids around here, you're going to try to get them, obviously. But your job is to win championships, not to make people around here happy or high schools around here happy that we got the local kids. It's
100%.
Get the talent, go recruit where the talent is, the DMV, the Maryland, Virginia. That's the places that have talent. And then comes, Ohio and Pennsylvania and, your other states. But you live in Florida. That's why Pitt has, because that's what I follow. That's why they have 4 to 5 coaches with territories in that state regularly. They live there.
Yeah, 100%. And Ethan, I do want to move on to Joe Smeltzer here to cover Penn State and then get to Mike Farrell here as we kind of get to a second half now of our National Signing Day Sports Now show. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you if Neal Brown was asked. And this is the only reason why I wish I went down there for this, because I probably would have brought this up. West Virginia is leading the conference in terms of players that are leaving in the transfer portal. I get that it was a situation where JT Daniels counts as a departure, but it now even feels like, from what he's said, that the program basically told him, you're best to go somewhere else. We want to develop. It goes both ways, but they all count as players that are leaving you in the portal. Some of them were surprises. Caden Prather, that was a surprise. He was going to be the wide receiver 1 in so many words. That was the case. And Neal Brown said at the end of the year, when we're dealing with the whole Charles Woods drama of him transferring and announcing going to the portal an hour before kickoff, that Caden Prather's fine. When he's healthy, he's locked in. He's going to be with us next year. We're talking about it. And then, no, that's not the case, Neal. He's in the portal several weeks later. 15, I think it is, 15, 16, something like that, in terms of kids overall in the portal. A lot of them are depth. A lot of these kids haven't played. The casual fan may not even know who they are. But as you know, as we all know, you got to build off of depth at some point. You can't throw all true freshmen out there for depth. You're losing a lot of kids to graduation and the draft as well. Did Neal bring anything up, or was anything asked to him about losing so many kids in the portal, losing people to the draft? You're losing a lot. So I know you want to develop, and you said you're going to go in the portal and try to add and outside of QB, and you're going to do really well in recruiting and then develop and try to keep those kids. But you also lost a lot. Did he answer that?
Yeah, to the best of his abilities, he did. He just brought up how if they're going to lose guys to the transfer portal, they can't overreact to it. They can't sit there and pout about how they're one of their best defensive players or offensive players left. What they have to do is just go back out into the transfer portal and gain. The saying is that if you lose in the transfer portal, you might as well go back into the transfer portal and gain somebody. That's just the only way.
And they're sending offers. Go to the site for any fans that are nervous. I mean, they are sending a lot of offers. They have got a couple commits. I know they're from Kent State and fans want Power 5 commits, but there's a lot of talent out there, and they have thrown offers even to Power 5 kids. So we don't know if they're going to add them. It's hard to believe they're going to fill everything, but yeah, you can add just as much as you can lose in the portal as well. Ethan, we appreciate the time for sure. We'll certainly be talking to you, and all your coverage, of course, is at WV Sports Now, Nittany Sports Now. So that means we are going to close up shop with our cleanup hitter to hit a home run or two for us. Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti will now bring in, and this is Mike, and Mike. We'll now bring in the third Mike of the trio here, Mike Farrell, our national college football analyst and writer within the Sports Now family of networks. So, Mike, thanks for joining us. I know you're obviously a very, very busy man on this day. That's kind of like Christmas, but maybe I saw your gift to what I asked for, maybe not as much as it was in recent years because of the portal. Any surprises for you on this day? How do you think these teams did? I know you're listening to a lot of this show. Do you disagree, agree with anything that's been said so far in terms of Pitt, West Virginia, and Penn State, but even nationally?
I missed the Pitt part, the West Virginia part when you talk about the locals. As was mentioned, I don't know who said it, but it's right. I mean, you really don't know anything. Right. If this is a political state, if this was a Florida or Texas or California or Ohio or a state that produces a ton of talent, you're kind of beholden to at least give those kids an extra look and not take a kid from Florida over a local Ohio kid. It could come bite you in the butt, if you do that, but not West Virginia. I mean, these kids, they all, are trying to get attention. They're all trying to go beyond Group of Five or FCS. But you take the ones you feel will fit. There's no political requirement here. It doesn't matter if you can not get back into that school because there isn't a big power school there. So Neal Brown and his staff, they have to recruit. I've always said this about West Virginia. There is no home recruiting territory for them. They have to hit Western PA. They have to hit Maryland, the DMV area, and they have to spot recruit down southeast, but also hit Texas, hit California, hit Ohio, which they got away from for a few years, which was puzzling to me, and they're back recruiting there again. And just hope to put together a class of 25 kids or so, where you could be pulling, kids from 15 states. And that's really a disadvantage, and it's why West Virginia is never in the top 25. And you can't be with the disadvantages they have. So anything between 25 and 30 is great. Anything between 25 and 35 is excellent and really the goal, I think, for West Virginia. Penn State, we talked about top 10. That would be great. It's not an effort thing. So Florida was an interesting discussion before because people think it's easy to recruit Florida because there's so many kids there. And we talk about the big three, Miami, Florida State, and Florida, but there's UCF now. They're a Power 5 program. Everybody goes into Florida. Everybody. Every team in the SEC and the ACC, every team in the Big Ten. So for James Franklin, Daniel Harris was lost today. That's a tough loss because you put so much effort in, and at the last second, you can snap your fingers and just lose somebody to a home state program that comes in the last second and makes him a priority, or a program like UGA when he was kind of maybe 5th or 6th on their list. So there's really a balance there, but you have to stay in there. I know schools, West Virginia being one of them, that kind of started to shy away from Florida for a little while because they lost so many down the stretch. You have to put in the work and just hope for the best. And I think that's what all three of these, Pitt is doing it as well. But there's a lot of heartbreak, and fans don't understand that you're going to lose more than you get.
Yeah, and that's why Pitt, Charlie Partridge is such a valuable guy on the Pitt staff. As you mentioned, every school, it's not something unique to go try to recruit Florida, but you have to have the right guys with the right reputation and the right contacts to recruit that state. Mike, Pitt, the Pitt fans, when they won the ACC championship last season, instantly fans think that that's going to result in a huge spike in recruiting rankings. What's your take on what Pat Narduzzi did this year? And is that fair to think that there should have been an instant spike, or is that a gradual thing and time in as far as being able to win, and then you'll start seeing the benefits of that?
You should see a spike the next year. So if you win, in the 2021 season, you should see, a spike the next recruiting year, 2022, and so on and so on. So that's disappointing from that perspective. You don't want to have right now, I think they're in the 45 to 50 range nationally on most of the sites. And, that's not great. You don't want that. Should it be an area of concern? Yeah. But will it be made up in the portal? That's the big question that we never had before. If you have a clunker of a recruiting class, and I'm not disparaging this class at all, but if I'm a Pitt fan, and I've always been honest with everybody about everything. Aaron Donald has a 3-star kid back in the day, and I had to tell everybody why, and I was wrong, and I'm dumb. I'll always just tell you the truth. Doesn't matter. I don't think I'm right all the time.
Opinions can change. No one's going to bat 1,000. We get it.
Well, so here's the thing. I'm not here to tell Pitt fans, this is great. It's not, but you can make up for it in the portal now, and you couldn't do that years ago. And I think that plays to the strategy as well. So we talk about staying in there for certain kids and having certain kids make demands. And Kenny Minchie is a good example of this, and not a demanding kid, not a kid that I want to make millions. But a Notre Dame rolls in, knocks on the door, comes in with a nice NIL package for him. It's a bigger program. You're going to fight, but you can also say, this one we're not going to win. Let's focus on the portal and see what we can get there. Now, you'd want a 4-star developmental quarterback. Some have him as a 3. I think he's right on that border. I'm not as high on him as some other people are nationally. But then you can adjust. You can get your portal quarterbacks, and then the next year to try to get that developmental kid that maybe is a 4-star. So my point here is Pitt's class is disappointing. There's no doubt in my mind. Right? I'm not going to lie to you and sell you. But the portal can make up for it. And I think that's where you have to focus.
And that's where Pitt has focused, because out of these 3 schools, could certainly say that Pitt's had the most success this offseason in terms of adding from the portal. So that is kind of the plan, that they're trying to continue the beat to go on and do it from the portal. But of course, you do need to also look to recruiting, and top 50, when even another school like, say, West Virginia is in the top 40, and they're also near you an hour away, and they've been worse the last 3 or 4 years, that maybe doesn't make Pitt fans too excited. But as you mentioned, the portal is an entire different ball of wax to this. So, Mike, I do want to kind of ask you, in terms of either, any of these 3 schools, Justin Benton flips from West Virginia to Houston. Dana Holgerson, the former Mountaineer coach, grabs him. They had a visit 2 days ago. Prior to that, he was always committed to West Virginia. That was kind of a surprise for the Mountaineers staff. They kind of admitted. So, but is it that one? Is there anything else? Pitt, Penn State, maybe even outside that was a surprise for you? A lot of this were Pitt went 19 for 19. West Virginia lost Benton, but otherwise got most of their guys they reasonably thought they were going to get. They were in top 5 for Snowden, but they probably were never really going to get him. And then Penn State top 15 class again, and they're in the Rose Bowl. Any surprises though that happened, or is it Benton?
No, I mean Snowden we all knew was going to be Wisconsin.
Right. He went with Fickle, right?
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it's one of those things where you want to be positive about it and confident about it. You don't want to ruin the moment for the kid. But that was one the staff knew that he was gone as well. So you don't want surprises, honestly. You really don't. No. So I think it's good that there aren't a lot of surprises. I mean, you want positive surprises. You'd love to be Oregon today, where you're stealing kids this and that. Sure, but you also don't want to be. You also don't want to be Oregon right now because they stole Peyton Bowen from Notre Dame, and he hasn't sent his letter in. And now they're scrambling, and now he's talking to Notre Dame again, and this could drag out. And it's just, there comes a point.
There have been kids that announced they aren't going to sign today now that some teams thought they locked in. Right.
Which, impacts Penn State for sure. But that's good news, because obviously that could have gone a different way. But yeah, there's a lot of kids that are sort of like hemming and hawing. And honestly, in my experience with these kids is the dramatic kids, the ones you fight and fight and fight for the most, are the ones that don't pan out or transfer or aren't great for the locker room. So boring. I mean, listen, there's no way. Penn State's class, I think, is very good, and I've written about how good it is. Did they miss at quarterback? Yeah, they did. They'll make up for that, though. They're an attractive enough program where they'll get somebody in the portal and they'll revamp next year. Now, James Franklin has had sort of a history of kind of whiffing on quarterbacks, so that's a concern. But he also took Trace McSorley, who I had as a defensive back, who I didn't think could ever play quarterback, and he turned out to be, pretty good. And then, Will Levis transferring. Oh my God, Sean Clifford sucks. Will Levis, you just never know. Will Levis was horrible this year. Sean Clifford was very serviceable. You don't know. Star rankings and quarterbacks, sometimes it's easy, like Trevor Lawrence, and sometimes you're just going to whiff. And it's all about developmental. So I'm not worried about that in that class. Penn State's class, I think, is very good. Top 15 class is what you want every year. You're not going to beat Ohio State, but if you could be there with Michigan and be that second or third team in the Big Ten every year, great, perfect. West Virginia's class, a big surprise to me. Neal Brown on the hottest of hot seats all year long, gets another year, but kind of honestly a dead man walking as a coach because he's got to do it this year. This isn't it. There's not going to be another year.
That's hard to sell in the living room. That I don't know if I'm going to be here for. The athletic director is saying, I don't know if you're going to be there for a year. You're trying to sell these kids. And as you know, a lot of these kids flat out said the reason why Gallagher went to Penn State and visited, or the reason why they were waffling, is because they wanted Brown to stay. They were not going to probably commit if Brown was fired. So these kids in this solid recruiting class, they're all in with Brown, but he can't guarantee that he'll be there in a year, even if they're still there.
No, he can't. And it's really hard to recruit that way, which is why I think it's such a great job that's been done by the staff, because, you didn't have a good year. The guy was, fired 1 week, given another chance the next week, and on. And that's really hard to sell in living rooms. It's really hard to really put together a recruiting class, and so I look at it compared to Pitt, because you should always compare West Virginia to Pitt geographically. They're located near there. And that's kind of the bar. Narduzzi, there is no question whether he was going to be the coach. It was a disappointing year for sure, but for West Virginia to have a better and higher ranked recruiting class than Pitt, that's impressive. West Virginia did a very good job this year. Is he the guy? I don't know. We're going to find out, but you could easily have one of those 50 to 60 ranked recruiting classes with the guy on the hot seat here. So if I'm a West Virginia fan, I'm happy with what I see recruiting wise. If I'm a Pitt fan, I'm disappointed. And if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm never satisfied, because Penn State fans are never satisfied.
They are not, no.
But I understand, this is a good class. This is a class that, we can actually compete in the Big Ten when they get rid of divisions. That will certainly help. So I'd be probably content if I'm a Penn State fan.
Hey, Mike, it's never too early to look ahead a little bit. I've already gotten questions about this, and I don't. I have a guess, but I have no idea. But really, the three big prospects in Western Pennsylvania this year or next year, class of 2024: Quentin Martin, Cam Lindsey, and Anthony Specca. Pitt have any chance at any of those three? If so, which player do they have the most realistic chance at possibly trying to get?
So this was another thing I was going to talk about a little bit is, and obviously you got Western PA, you've got Eastern PA, you got a mix of what's going on there. The WPIAL is way down, and it's been down for years. I think the last time the WPIAL was really, really elite and good was when Dave Wanstead was recruiting at Pitt, which is a very, very long time ago. And that's hurt Pitt a lot. It used to be, let's fend off Notre Dame and Ohio State and Michigan for our WPIAL kids, or maybe some Southeast teams who come up and try to steal kids. That's our battle, but we've got a home field advantage. Now they're recruiting on the road a lot more. Pitt, for these kids, Quentin Martin, first of all, is going to be a guy that everybody in the world comes after. Now, is it attractive to play at Pitt? Yeah. He's a running back. And the way their offense is structured, you're going to get a ton of carries, and you're going to be the guy. That being said, if the Georgias and Alabamas of the world are coming in, the Ohio States of the world are coming in, you're probably not going to win that battle. So I don't want to sell false hope. Penn State already has Cooper Cousins, and that's a good start. Agard, a Philly kid, got a ton of interest. Becca has a ton of interest. If I had to pick one that I think they would have the best shot at, it would be Martin, because he is a local kid. He's very proud of his, home state. He's a kid who seems to be down to earth. He's not an NIL seeker, and he likes that staff and he likes that offense because it's perfect for him. But everything could change between now and the time 2024 comes around, because the offense could change. The offenses other teams could change. Narduzzi could take another job. You have no idea what's going to happen. So right now I'd say that's the guy that they're focusing on and they have the best shot at. But even if he commits tomorrow to someplace else, it's never over.
Yeah, right. You got a whole year ahead. Sure.
And so that's why it's way, way too early to even consider that. Like, Cooper Cousins from McDowell is committed to Penn State. What-de-do? I mean, nothing.
It's almost probably smart for kids not to get near committing this early, a year in advance. Like, let it play out a little bit. Let them court you.
They have nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing. I'll commit to Penn State, whatever. And I'm not saying Cousins is this type of guy. Nothing to lose. Other teams are going to come in and try to. So it's really the coaches that have no kind of say in this.
And what will exist for the entirety of the year for the 2024 class that just started existing for PA kids that Rodney Gallagher already jumped on because he has an NIL deal while he's still in high school, is they'll be able to do that all year long. Like they'll be able to get out in front of that now and be able to go behind the Gallagher path there in PA. So that's a big deal. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti, Mike Farrell here talking on our Sports Now Network National Signing Day show. Mike, before we let you go, I do kind of want to bring up what Mike V and I talked about at the top of the show before we brought the guests on in terms of evaluating recruiting classes in this new era. We're in a transfer portal era. Pitt, top 50 class, but they're looking a lot to the portal to try to win now. West Virginia did that for years, but now they're admittedly trying to develop. Will that be a good or bad thing? It's kind of risky when you're on the hot seat. Penn State, you're winning 10 games in the Rose Bowl. You don't have to worry about the portal as much, but they certainly could get kids interested in that program and have dealt with transfers before. And you can quickly fix something in the portal as well as also see a mass exodus, which these programs have all endured. Jordan Addison leaving Pitt despite an ACC title. That clearly was a money grab. West Virginia losing a lot of kids to the portal, etc. So for you, is there any thinking for you in terms of giving these ranks, in terms of giving letter grades, and when you evaluate and when you write articles for us on, I got to do something new and change something because just doing it the simple grade off of a recruiting class isn't really fair. Is there any way you're going to be able to include a transfer situation when you're grading an off season overall, or are recruiting grades and evaluation rankings maybe overrated now because of the portal?
Well, the high school grades and rankings are overrated because of the portal. I mean, there's so many kids that in this class that we're talking about and losing sleep over and all that are going to be in the portal after spring or after their freshman season. So that's overrated. The calendar itself isn't conducive a lot to ranking a combination class. It's more so now because they do have this stupid window. I hate the window, the 45-day window, but at least it lumps everything together. You've got your early signing class ranking for high school. Then you've got your February signing day, and you've got most of the portal done. And then you get the 15 days after the spring. So the way I think it should be done, and I haven't figured out if I'm going to do this or not yet, I'm still doing team rankings for high school and team rankings for the portal. And I don't have a mathematical system. I'm all subjective now. I hated the mathematical system. It was something that was thrown upon us because we didn't want any bias. But people still think we're biased. I mean, what's the point of having a mathematical system if you're just going to be accused of bias anyways? And the mathematical system says, well, it's the math that did it, not me. Yeah, but you rank the individual players, and those formulas go into the overall team formula. So if you're biased towards a team, you're going to rank those kids higher. It's just subjective is the way to go. I think more of an emphasis should be put on your portal ranking than on your high school ranking, because those kids are less likely to double portal. Of course, JT Daniels is on his 15th school, but that's rare.
He's the Van Wilder of college football.
Yeah, it's very rare. Yeah. So, and we see USC didn't have a great recruiting class last year as far as nationally. Lincoln Riley's first year kind of held back a lot of scholarships. I don't even know where they finished, but it wasn't like, it was solid, but it wasn't top 5, top 10 or whatever. Right. But their portal, they brought in 28 kids. Yeah. And the portal is all that mattered because Caleb Williams was in the portal. Jordan Addison was in the portal. Mario Williams was in the portal. Everybody who played and made a big part of that roster was in the portal. So for me, if you're a fan, I think what you should do is focus on the high school rankings, focus on the portal rankings. But if they were combined, if somebody does combine them, mathematical or not, I think it should be more of a 65-35 split with an emphasis on the portal rankings, which is great news for Pitt. Because like I said, if you have a dud of a class, you can make up for it in the portal. It's not so great news for West Virginia because they kind of struggle in the portal a little bit. But a lot of that, I think, is Neal Brown not being, he's been on the hot seat for a couple of years now. And for Penn State, I think it's really good for them because they do a good job and a solid job in the portal. So that's how I would do it. 65-35 portal now. And I think that's going to get bigger percentage for the portal as we move on because high school recruiting it's not fading away, but it's becoming less important.
All right, last question, Mike. You're the godfather. I've respected you for years. That's why I got into this business, is because of reading your stuff over the years. So you have a feel for what's going to happen. Deion Sanders is the talk of college. We're just going to switch here
to say the least.
The talk of college football. He's making a lot of headlines. Is this a long-term thing, or do you see this flaming out as far as him having the passion to do this for a long time, or was this just a 3, 4, 5 year thing and then he's done?
Well, he'll coach. I think he has a passion for coaching. Now, again, Deion's very hard to predict, but he's always been into coaching. Back when he cropped up those high school teams that failed, and he was always a guy who was around the Under Armour game and has a passion for coaching and teaching kids. So for him to get into coaching is not a big surprise to me. Colorado's a surprise. He'll be there for 2 years, and that's the shelf life of his son at quarterback there.
Right.
And then he's gone. But he'll go to a bigger program. I mean, Florida State may welcome him back if Norvell sort of, recedes a little bit, or some other.
They weren't interested in him last year. That was kind of.
Well, they will be, because what they're going to see here.
His value is higher, I guess, now as a coach.
Well, and we're also going to see more celebrity type head football coaches because of Deion Sanders.
On the higher level, not just HBCUs, because we've seen those with former players at the HBCU level, but now he's going to pave the way for Power 5.
Oh, and I'm trying to think of the next guy who it could be. You know, I don't really know. You know, it could be, you know.
Well, Eddie George is currently coaching in the HBCU, not having success with Deion. People thought Ryan Leaf would go into coaching. He's more into media now.
Trent Dilfer's in coaching now. He's in Group of 5. They're not Deion, though. I'm trying to think of, like, you know.
Deion's pizzazz, like that swagger is a little different.
You know, would a Peyton Manning ever be interested in being a head football coach at a college level? Those type of guys would really move the needle.
I'll ask this, because I know West Virginia fans ask this literally, actually, and I'll let you go on then. Pat White has had a career of coaching. He's currently an assistant with the Chargers. He's been at programs, USF and even lower. There are some that actually want him on the staff or would want him hired if Brown is fired. Is that insanity, or is there now more of a chance of those things because of Deion?
There's a chance. Pat White is one of the best college football players you're ever going to see, ever. And still, the general fan base doesn't know who he is, nor do the recruits. Deion is like that guy.
Sure, that's fair.
I think Pat White would be a great addition to the West Virginia staff, just like Denard Robinson at Michigan and things like that. Bring back former players. Cadillac Williams at Auburn. You know, those guys are going to be successful in that area because they're well known. You know, Deion's going to go. This is a 1-11 football team. He's going to go 5-7 next season, maybe 6-6 the following season. Leave for a bigger job, but leave Colorado in such a better place with NIL. They've reduced their academic restrictions now. He's going to leave that roster in a much better place. That's kind of what you're going to see. You're going to see the smaller schools or the middling schools that are struggling hire big name guys that will come in for a couple of years, stepping stone it, and change their entire infrastructure because NIL is so important. The biggest thing Deion's going to do for Colorado is change that NIL collective. That's it. And that's the most important thing that he could possibly do. And Colorado's going to be in great shape because of that. So, yeah, it's a trend. Yeah. I don't like it. I don't think he's a good coach. No offense to him. I don't think he's a good coach. He had the best roster. Not even close. The best roster. So prove to me that I'm trying to think of an example of a team that was so exponentially better. Even Alabama, during the dynasty, wasn't exponentially better than the runner-up team. Prove to me you can do it at the college level when you're not the best roster, then I'll believe in you. But right now, I don't. So,
as you mentioned, though, if he gets 6 wins in a bowl game in Colorado after what they've endured for 20 years, he'll be thought of as Vince Lombardi nationally. Like, he'll get talked about very positively off of just a bowl appearance.
Wow, listen, people are already talking about Colorado's the new Alabama, so there's a lot of idiots out there.
I hear you.
I mean, I've heard everything about everything.
But the bar's not that high that he has to do, though. He doesn't have to do that much. 5-7, that'll be a positive turnaround from 1 win.
It's a smart move in a way because you can't get worse than 1-11.
The bar is low. Yeah.
Right. You know, so listen, all power to him. I don't dislike the guy. I mean, it's very flattering. He follows me on Twitter. I DM with him every once in a while. Well, listen, I'm a huge Deion fan. I'm a Cowboy fan. But I grew up following Florida State and
it's intriguing if nothing else.
Atlanta and San Francisco and Dallas. It's great. I love him.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know if he can coach. But for Colorado, 1-11. This is the move you make. West Virginia, if they were 1-11 and they wanted to target Deion and he was interested, they should hire him in a second because it's going to change everything about your program. Yeah. And that's what's necessary. That's why more celebrity hires are going to be. Pat White, love you. You're not a celebrity hire.
No, I just brought him up because he's the one in coaching. They do obviously have bigger name celebrities that are involved, but that's even why.
How about Randy Moss? There's a coach that he can't coach a lick. But you bring him to West Virginia.
Pac-Man Jones.
Well, I mean, Randy Moss. That is the biggest name in wide receiver history other than Jerry Rice. He comes to West Virginia. 2 years, West Virginia is a completely different program because of him. And he may not be able to coach a lick.
I don't know if he'd want to, though, because he has a personal problem against WVU that goes way back to high school days, and then he ended up at Marshall, as we know.
He wouldn't, but he's the West Virginia version of Deion Sanders.
No, 100%. No, I get what you're saying, and that's why it was a fantastic hire for Colorado for sure, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure others will jump aboard. The bar is very, very low. They're very, very intriguing, to say the very, very least, and Deion is kind of one of those guys that if he's with you, you love him. If he's not with you, you're kind of annoyed by him. Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe he's at Florida State in the future, and maybe we'll see if he locks in there or if he keeps on jumping. If he ever gets to FSU, does he stay there for a period of time, since it does seem like he does actually like coaching, but he's also likes the money, as Prime Time has told you for 35 plus years.
More than the money, he likes the attention.
He likes the attention, 100%.
Yeah, the attention. So he'll jump around a lot.
He's an egomaniac for sure, which has been a positive for him in his career. Mike, we definitely appreciate the time for sure. You're definitely the godfather, to say the least. Obviously, we appreciate all your work with us throughout the Sports Now family of networks. All that will keep on coming at Pittsburgh Sports Now, WVSN, and Nittany Sports Now. Mike V, anything else for?
No, it's on to 2024. We get off this call here.
How about you, a little plug for the Portal Report too? Yeah, it's kind of.
Oh, fun. Absolutely, yeah, the Portal Report, absolutely.
Guys, yeah.
Absolutely.
My whole thing is, now that I'm independent, I want to move the needle for people, but I also focus on my own site too. So it's a tough balance. Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State's easy for me because my site doesn't focus on that much. The Portal, man, I'm telling you, it's a gold mine, and eventually we'll have to talk about merging, because I think if we merge, we would be unstoppable when it comes to the portal.
Well, taking over the world is always something
if that's the case, Mike, I'm going to be booking a flight, and we're going to meet face to face, and we'll.
Well, I also think you guys can build out your network too. Yeah. I really do believe you can move into different states. I think it's a great 3-site network.
Sure. Yeah.
We got a chance to.
Oh yeah,
even higher.
Oh, it's in our brain as well. That's not the first time that's been thought about. Absolutely, there's things on the feelers, but yeah, absolutely, taking over the world is something that we also will enjoy as well. But nonetheless, here we are, and National Signing Day now is over. It is a portal world, but the college kids and the high school kids and the National Signing Day is still kind of trying to all live in it and marry all of it together. So Mike Farrell, MikeFarrellSports.com, by the way, is his site that he also contributes to, of course, and runs, and then the Portal Report, in addition to WVSN, PSN, and Nittany Sports Now. So, Mike, we definitely appreciate the time. That was Mike Farrell. Again, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti. So, Mike, National Sign Day now is behind us. We can maybe, grab a cold one.
It's almost behind us. There's still
it's never over officially, but true. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be another day in first Wednesday and first.
Right. This is the early period.
February.
Yeah.
But that'll be probably a lot more about transfers and stuff. But there are some guys who chose not to sign, and will sign at the All-American game and some other things. But 80-90% of the recruiting for this year is done, and coaches are looking at the 2024 roster or their roster next year, and we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's multiple ways to skin a cat here in terms of portal, no portal, recruiting, develop, whatever you want to do. We'll see who's right and who's wrong, and definitely seems like a portal world that we're all living in nonetheless. So that seems to be the way to go. But if you can't have success there, then maybe you have to go another route. And maybe we will see more former players of the Deion Sanders route to come in. Honestly, the one example, and he's not going to coach for a very, very long time, Drew Brees. Purdue brings in Drew Brees to be on the staff for a bowl game, maybe a little bit after, and all of a sudden they're stealing an offensive coordinator. They were just in the Big Ten title game, but only because of the division format. They weren't really that great, but those type of big names maybe could bring a pizzazz to the program and help them recruiting wise. We'll see if that worked for them or not. But again, Pittsburgh Sports Now, WV Sports Now, Nittany Sports Now, and of course the Portal Report for all of our coverage of the portal and recruiting. And then of course, MikeFarrellSports.com for Mike's individual site as our takeover of the world of college athletics, as well as the high school game, and of course recruiting and the portal continues on.